and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet. And we have Terry on our podcast today to talk about movement and nutrition, which, as you know, Janet and I talk about commonly. So, Terry, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And so tell us a little bit about your history and how you got here.
So I woke up at 37. I'm almost 49. So 12 years ago, and I was 210 pounds, overworked, overstressed, overweight. I'm 5'3", weighing in at 210 with 2 children post-pregnancy. I was actually still wearing pregnancy clothes. Don't tell anybody. And I couldn't figure out how to lose the weight. So I had a really hard time. I kept yo-yoing up and down, doing every single diet you can possibly imagine. There are 40,000 books on Amazon on diets, and I've probably done about half of them. And the result was always the same. I would lose 30, 20 pounds, and I would gain it right back plus some. And so eventually I finally understood. Took me a long time, but I finally got to the point where I realized that, diets don't work. Like the commercial diets that are out there, I'm not going to name them. There's lots of them out there. They just don't work. They're too restrictive. They're not sustainable in real life. Like, we're real human beings, right? We have jobs, we have kids, we have households, we have parents, we have all these things. We can't survive on a stick of celery for the rest of our lives. And so as soon as you stop following the prescribed diet, the weight comes right back. And so I went on a quest and on a mission to figure it out. I said, I'm kind of slow because it took me a long time to figure it out, but I'm not that slow. Okay. Like, I can do this. And so here I am. I figured out what worked for me, and not just for me, but it actually works for almost every one of my clients. And that is macro-based nutrition, strength training, mindset work, and figuring out whether we're eating emotionally, why are we eating emotionally. Our sleep pattern is a big contributor to how we operate throughout the day. So all those things, they're called lifestyle medicine. And they don't necessarily involve traditional pharmaceutical compounds.
That's awesome. What a great story. So, Janet, what questions do you have for Terry?
Okay. So many times when I'm talking to people, I feel like people don't understand serving sizes. That's where I think macro comes in. So how do you approach that with them? Because everybody's on a different space and level as to where they start, but I just think there's just kind of a misunderstanding, or just maybe they're just not paying attention. So how do you address that with your clients?
Yes, so it's a very bio-individual question, right? So a serving size for me, it would be very different from a serving size of a 220-pound man who's 6'1". Right. So everybody has very unique and personal nutrition and fuel requirements. The common serving size that's out there that you're going to hear about is not necessarily the right one for, let's say, a 4'9" woman who weighs 110 pounds, that has a lot of muscle mass because she's been lifting weights for 10 years. So her nutritional requirements going to be very different from a 5'9" woman who is 120 pounds and has only done cardio her entire life. Right. So it's very personalized, very bio-individual. Now, a good place to start is, depending on what your goal is, and there's multiple types of goals. You could be looking to cut weight, meaning you're looking to reduce body fat specifically while maintaining muscle. That's one goal. You could be looking to maintain both body fat and muscle mass, or you could be looking to build muscle mass while keeping body fat as low as possible. So you're still going to gain body fat no matter what when you're trying to build muscle mass, but there are different strategies for these three types of goals, right? So if you're looking to cut weight, which is what most people are looking to do, they're cut body fat. The general, it's very generic, okay? So it's not personalized what I'm going to tell you, because it's almost impossible to give, large scale nutrition advice. Is, let's say you are a woman, you're about 50 years old, you are 5'3", and you weigh 170 pounds, and you're looking to reduce body fat. You're thinking maybe your ideal weight is going to be 150, 145. The way that you would start is you would designate your protein to be 1 gram of protein per ideal body weight number. So if you're looking at 145, you want to go from 170 to 145, you want to be at 145 grams of protein for the day. Now, the other two macros are dependent on your current caloric intake. So if you on average are eating 2,500 calories per day to maintain 170 pounds, you're going to look to cut that down, right? So let's say 2,500 calories, you want to cut that down to about 2,000 calories. So that's your first cut. And you designate 145 grams of protein to that times 4. You subtract those calories from the total, and then you divide the rest of it into carbs and fat. So it's a little bit algorithmic, but it's doable. So that would be the way that I would approach setting somebody up into a deficit to get to 145 pounds. Did that make sense?
It does. I think, though, you touched on something that most people don't understand, is that we've been sold that everybody should be on a certain, like, so many proteins, so many fats, and so many carbohydrates, just as the pyramid that we've been sold, the American SAD diet, as far as I'm concerned, because that is a very true statement that you said. It depends on what your goals are and what works for you and where you need to be. Because Shawn and I, we have 2 boys, men, they'll probably be mad at me for saying that. One is 25 and one is 23. And they both eat differently depending on what their needs are. And the thing that I think is really hard for women is the protein part. Because I think we've been told we should eat carbs. And we're good about, or most people are really good about, okay, well, my fruits and vegetables, but protein really matters, I think, as we age, because if we don't maintain good protein, then our bones and our muscle, no matter if you have lifted or if you are, doing a lot of cardio, you have to have that protein. So I love what you say about that, because that's really important, I think.
I like what you said too, Terry, about, and I never even thought about it this way, but if somebody's trying to, and we've heard the term one gram of protein per pound of body weight, but I like what you said about, you got to go to what your goal weight is.
Right.
If you're at 170, don't eat 170 grams of protein. If you want to be to 145, eat 145 grams of protein. That makes a lot of sense.
It makes it easy, actually. Easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting 140 grams of protein per day is not that difficult, really. I do get a lot of women that are horrified when I give out that number, because there's a lot of misunderstanding that they have to eat it all at the same time. But essentially, you need to break that up into smaller parts, right? So, and you don't want to have really huge meals really ever, especially for women, and especially as we hit perimenopause. Now, men are very different. in terms of the quantity that they can eat and how often they need to eat. They can take in a lot more volume, essentially. So maybe they can eat it in 3 sittings. But for women, especially being, trained in all these years to eat little, be small, always trying to lose weight, we're never skinny enough. The scale is never right. It's very hard to come to terms with how much protein we actually have to eat. So my suggestion is cut it into 5 meals. So you'll have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner plus 2 snacks throughout the day. This keeps your blood sugar leveled. It keeps the hunger manageable, especially if you're in a caloric deficit. And the longer you progress into a caloric deficit, the hungrier you get. So you will be very happy to be getting 140 grams of protein.
Yeah, and protein is satiating. It makes you feel full. Along with fat, I think fat is pretty important for that also. Unlike carbohydrates, you can eat most carbohydrates, you just keep eating them and eating them and eating them, and you just never feel full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the carbohydrates, the way that I work with my clients and what I recommend is the starchy carbs, like toast, pasta, potatoes, sweet potatoes, things like that, that you bookend your strength training sessions with them, because that's when the body is most optimally utilizing starch. And so you want to have your oatmeal, your banana, your toast, your English muffin, your sweet potato, either before or after a strength training workout. And then the rest of the meals, so the other 3 meals, are mostly vegetables, like, squash, green beans, cauliflower, broccoli, a little bit of fruit, berries, strawberries, things like that.
So tell us, people love stories. Tell us, other than your transition, which was wonderful, tell us a story about a client that you had that had a great transformation.
My gosh, absolutely. So there is a YouTube episode on my YouTube channel of my client, Karen. And if you go on YouTube, I believe the name is my name, Terry Tateossian, at THOR, THOR is the very first video in the list, where it's incredible. I mean, she's an absolute badass, incredible woman with so many challenges that happened to her in her early 60s. It wasn't just overweight. And I don't want to tell her story for her, but she ended up having her husband pass away unexpectedly. She was diagnosed with cancer. She had to sell her house and move. She had a debilitating back injury where she needed to get spinal fusion surgery. And she was overweight, right? And so she had to figure out how to regroup her life, how to restart over again. And at the age of 62, I believe she started working with me. We've been now working together 2 years, and she has transformed on every level possible. I mean, I just saw her last month, actually. And she was out walking and out training women half her age at one of my retreats that I do in Tennessee. And her body composition looks incredible. She has defined muscles. She feels good. She can do whatever she wants. And that makes me very happy. But she's one of many cases like that. And so I have clients in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the result is very similar across the board. The difference is the consistency, right? The difference is how consistent can you be with this lifestyle, because it's not easy.
Yeah, and consistency is definitely the key, and it's never too late. I mean, just like you say, the 60-year-old, as Janet and I are approaching 60, we're, we don't want to call that old. So it's never too late. We've seen people turn their lives around in their 60s and 70s even. But you're right. It's about being consistent. It's not, there's no short-term fix. It's about long-term being consistent. Not that you can't cheat every once in a while. but it's the things you do day in and day out over and over again for months at a time.
Absolutely. And, I don't like to call it cheating. It feels like at some point you don't even want to cheat because you don't see the benefit of it.
Yeah.
And it does take, they say, science and studies, they say that it takes 30 days to change your taste buds. I tend to disagree with that just from personal experience. It takes a lot longer.
I would say that too.
Yeah. So, 30 days, I was still fiending for sugar, right? But it does take, in my personal opinion, this is not scientific information, it takes about a year. And if you stick with it long enough and you rewire your taste buds and your habits and your reactions and responses to things, you don't even have a taste for it anymore. Now, the other culprit that I see very more often than I like is alcohol. So alcohol and sugar are two of the main substances that I see that get in the way of people hitting their goals.
What about,
Agreed.
Shawn and I talk about movement a lot, and I think when I look at people, I'm like, I've heard, oh, I don't want to sweat. I don't like sweating, or I don't like, and it's like, it's kind of this odd concept that sometimes people have. But I feel like, movement does something else for us besides just sweating, and maybe besides just even building new bone and muscle. There's some other benefits that we see when people are active.
I've heard it all. I think I've heard, I don't want to sweat. I'm going to hurt myself. Lifting weights is for men, but I do yoga and Pilates. Why do I have to do resistance training? Isn't walking resistance training? I've heard all of it.
Mhm.
And there is a lot of resistance to resistance training. And so I don't call it that anymore. I just call it movement, like you said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the sweaty part, I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. Maybe when you're not used to moving, sweating feels really uncomfortable. And absolutely, I think in the very beginning, I remember when I was overweight, sweating felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
However, over time, the sweating aspect it changed. It didn't feel the same way once I reduced body fat. Most of the time, if I'm lifting weights, I don't even sweat in any particular, overwhelming way. I'm not like dripping in sweat anymore, but I was at the very beginning. So something to me says that if you're profusely sweating, it just may be that you're really out of shape, and eventually it'll get better over time as your body starts adapting to that. Or maybe you're in a really hot gym, which is, I don't know, or maybe you're outside. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. There's got to be, I think, no matter what kind of activity you're doing, Jan and I bike ride a lot. And, when you're going fast down the road, you can't, your sweat's evaporating. So you can't feel yourself sweating, but you are sweating. So I think we probably forget about the benefits, and I don't know, there might be a study out there, but I would assume there's a lot of benefits to sweating. That's why humans have gravitated towards warm water and saunas and that for many years, because there's probably benefits to sweating.
Yeah, there's a detoxification benefit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, and the lymphatics, the skin, our skin is our largest organ, and it's part of the lymphatic system. And so its job is to reduce toxins or to eliminate as much toxins as possible. Now, if you think about it, we're attacked by synthetic toxins from every direction, right? So you have it in the water, the air, the soil, the food, the fabrics that we're wearing. Half the things are, I call it plastic. because it's made out of petroleum, right? So all the synthetic fibers that we're constantly, or our makeup is all synthetic chemicals. Our hair products, our hair coloring products, our nails, nail polish, all of these things are chemicals and toxins that are fairly new to our evolution. And at some point, our body doesn't know or can't handle the amount of toxicity that we're swimming in all the time. And it starts to break down. But I believe, I might be incorrect here, but sweating and the skin is part of the lymphatic system, and it sweats and flushes out as many toxins as possibly can. At this point, how much can it do? Who knows?
Yeah, but I just don't think it can be bad for us. I mean, and especially just movement in general. I like what you said about you changed the name of resistance training to movement, and that's one thing. Janet and I we're careful about saying the word exercise because it's like a 4-letter word, and really it is about movement. I mean, if you think what our ancestors did many generations ago, they didn't go to a gym. They didn't go on a treadmill. They didn't have Stairmasters. They just moved all day long and lifted stuff all day long. Sometimes really heavy stuff, sometimes just constantly lifting stuff. And with the movement, it was mostly walking. And every once in a while, they ran really fast and sprinted. I mean, those are just kind of facts. So I think if we can mimic that as much as possible, I think that's important. So move all day long. Sprint every once in a while, or go fast every once in a while, lift things all day long, and every once in a while lift something really heavy.
Yes. And same thing with the food. So if you think about the evolutionary process of the Neanderthal and the Homo sapien, back in the cave times, they didn't eat 1,000 different variations of fruits and vegetables, right? They ate what was in season and what was growing, and it was probably the same thing every day. If they caught a buffalo or a deer or, whatever, a squirrel or a rabbit, whatever, right? They ate that all the time. They ate that consistently. They didn't really have such large variation in diet. And nowadays, you walk into the supermarket and you have 10,000 different vegetables and fruits, and so much confusion about, well, should I even be eating protein? Well, what do you think your ancestors ate?
Right.
Right. And so I feel like we're in a lot of confusion. We're very confused.
Well, and when you think about what our ancestors did, they probably, think about the Eskimos, for instance, or anybody in a northern latitude. I mean, they probably had fish, salmon, and they had seals, and they had whales to eat, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't fruits and vegetables growing ubiquitously around them, so they probably ate 3 or 4 different things. But even if you look at I'm going to go with Janet's ancestors in Norway, fish and potatoes, and they probably ate a lot of that. They probably had some grazing animals, possibly, whether it be sheep or something like that. But, it wasn't, I don't think they were eating pineapples.
Right. And they were not obese. They didn't have an obesity epidemic.
No.
And then the other thing is, if you look out in nature, like animals in the wild, how many of them qualify as morbidly obese?
They don't stay alive. If they were obese, they wouldn't stay alive. I've got a great Janet knows where I'm going with this. So Terry, you'll love this story, and our listeners and viewers. It's actually a horrible story.
Oh yeah.
But it's a great analogy to what can happen to us as humans. So we went to Whistler Bike Park over the weekend, and we were riding our bikes back to the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, riding our bikes back to the hotel to put them in under the parking garage. And Janet runs over a squirrel, And it was a very horrific scene to watch this squirrel suffer, because I mean, it probably broke its back, and lots of intestinal damage and internal damage, and it's sitting there
keep describing it. Stop.
spinning all this. It's horrible. But this crow was like right on it, like immediately. It was watching for this. So the crow took care of it. Nature worked its way out. But here, what was really interesting, Janet says, I said, I can't believe, because we see squirrels all the time, and most of the time they move, right?
Right. And they're running across
And they're
the
running
trail
across
all
and,
the time.
Yeah, trying to get food or whatever. And they're running across
Yep.
the trail, trying to get food. Then they'll run back when they see anybody. She goes, well, I think that squirrel was fat. And sure enough, we compared it to some other squirrels that were in the like at the top of the mountain, where there wasn't as much food that they were getting from humans. And guess what? The squirrels were skinnier. And it just reminds you as humans how dangerous it is when we are obese. We can't move as fast to save our lives. Literally, it literally kills us. The most dangerous thing as an American is to be obese. Cardiovascular disease related to obesity, and more Americans die from cardiovascular disease than anything else. So that's the most dangerous thing as an American. So that's a horrible, tragic analogy, but it just hit my mind when I thought about that after that happened.
Mm-hmm. And diabetes.
Yeah, and obesity pretty much causes diabetes. If you're eating too many calories, especially carbohydrates, and you're not moving enough, you're not burning the glucose, and you're going to get diabetes.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely stunning, the amount of obesity, not just in the United States, but even overseas, that is taking place right now. It's stunning. It's never happened before in the history of the world that we had such an obesity pandemic, really.
Yeah, it's a real pandemic. I mean, it is literally killing people. And one of our goals as podcasts is just to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health, because all these diseases that are created by obesity, like you said, diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and just the list goes on, they're reversible. You just got to change your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need drugs for them.
Yes. Well, don't even get me started on that topic. I don't know what the heck is going on, but I will go on Instagram inundated with weight loss medication. I will go on Netflix, Hulu, Prime. It doesn't matter. Any website. I'll be in the gym on the Stairmaster looking up at those screens that they have, the news or whatever. Even in the gym, they're playing medication for weight loss. It's everywhere. Everybody wants to be on it. And yes, it's a great medication when prescribed on label and for certain people. And just like nutrition, it's very bio-individual, right? It's very personal. It depends on where you're at in the spectrum of obesity. It could be life-changing, life-saving. But to me, what I'm hearing on the ground floor, on the street, what I'm hearing is people that don't really need it, they really want to be on it because the idea of changing their lifestyle is daunting.
And we don't know. We know some of the short-term side effects of those drugs, the GLP-1 agonists, but we don't know some of the long-term effects. And just like you said, ultimately, maybe short-term they can be a tool, but ultimately long-term, unless you want to be on those drugs for a lifetime, which is I don't recommend, you have to change your lifestyle.
And I mean, the lifestyle that should be changed is not good to begin with. So I'm not even sure why there's so much resistance to doing things that are ultimately good for you. If I had known 12 years ago exactly what to do and just done that, I could have saved myself so many trial and errors, so many headaches, so many failures. I could have been in better health a lot sooner. I just didn't know. So I was very motivated to do whatever it was, but none of the things were working. It was almost like all of the the narrative was always pointing me into a direction of unsustainability, really. And I would, fail, and I would try again and again and again. And every single thing was so restrictive. It was so unsustainable. There was no way to adhere to it in real life as a real person. And so it's almost like it's set up to have you go from, hamster wheel to hamster wheel to hamster wheel until you become so delusional and so just fed up that you don't want to do anything because nothing's working, right? So the idea is nothing works.
So, Terry, as we wrap this podcast up, tell us what you have a passion for.
My passion is waking. I work only with women, but men too, to the possibility that maybe everything we've been fed maybe is not the entire story. Maybe there's a better way to live. Maybe we don't have to work 16, 18 hours a day, be exhausted, stressed, overweight, overwhelmed, have no time for ourselves. Maybe all the things that we're being told we need, maybe we don't need them. Maybe we can focus more attention on our internal world, which will then be reflected in our external world. And that is, I do that through nutrition, movement, sleep, stress, and substance issues.
I love it. So let's go and stream her website and tell us about your website. If anybody has any questions, how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can get a hold of me actually in person. I do a lot of in-person retreats at the House of Rose is the name of the website. Most of the retreats for 2025 are sold out, but we do have a few open for 2026. And I also do one-on-one coaching with women that are over 40 in perimenopause that are looking to make changes to their lifestyle. I actually recently got my certification as a lifestyle medicine coach from Harvard Medical School.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on our show today, Terry. And you've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health.
Absolutely. Love what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in tomorrow, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time for a special edition with Janet and I. Tomorrow, Tuesday, Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thank you.